The next problem tests your knowledge of differentiation of trigonometric functions. It could be very easy for you to do this problem, or it could be more difficult depending on your knowledge of differentiation of trig functions. So let's read this one. If f of x equals secant x plus cosecant x, then what is f prime of x? Well, let's just go ahead and write down what the answer is to this, if you happen to already know what the derivative of the secant of x is, and some of you do, and that is the secant x times the tangent of x. And then it says plus, so we're going to take the derivative of the second term. So plus, and what's the derivative of cosecant x? And some of you may know this, and it's minus or negative cosecant x cotangent x. Cosecant x cotangent x. And we have a plus, a negative there, so we can just get rid of that plus sign and just have minus cosecant x cotangent x. And we would be done. But some of you may not know what the derivative of secant and cosecant is. Maybe you've only dealt with sines and cosines. And we can do this problem still. It'll take longer. But if you happen to have maybe a textbook that never mentioned what the derivative of things like the secant of x is, we can do it this way. So let's just write down some basic trig identities that we know. Secant x is equal to 1 over cosine x, and what's the cosecant of x equal to? 1 over sine x. And then another basic function is the tangent of x. It might be helpful to write that one down. And that's sine x over cosine x. So just using these basic functions, just the sine and the cosine, and knowing what secant and cosecant are equal to, let's rewrite our problem again. F of x equals secant x plus cosecant x. And then let's just put their identities down, their simple identities. Secant x is again 1 over cosine x. And then plus, what was the cosecant of x? We have written it up there. It's 1 over sine x. And now take the derivative of these functions. These are doable. There's several ways we could take the derivative of these two terms, but let's just do the most basic. We see a quotient here. Let's do the quotient rule. So we go the low d high, so we take the denominator, which is cosine x, times the derivative of 1. What's the derivative of 1? It's 0. Minus high, that's 1 in the numerator, times the derivative of the denominator, which is minus sine x. And then that's all over the square of the denominator. And let's just write that as cosine x times itself. Cosine x times cosine x. That's the first term. To do the second term, we do essentially the same thing. We go, we're going to use the quotient rule, so low, which is the denominator, sine x, times the derivative of the numerator, which again is 0. Derivative of 1 is 0. Minus the numerator, which is 1, times the derivative of the denominator, which is cosine x. And once again, we square the denominator, which is sine x. We can write that as sine x times sine x. Okay, let's simplify what we have. let's see, we have cosine of x times 0. Cosine of x times 0, that's 0. And then we have minus 1 times minus sine x, that would be positive 1 sine x. And I want to keep the 1 in, and you'll see the reason for that in a second. So 1 times the sine x, and then the numerator is then simplified, and we just put that over our denominator, which is cosine x times cosine x. Let's simplify the second term. Once again, sine x times 0 is 0, and we have a minus, and let's just bring it out in front, minus 1 times cosine x, and that's over, again, sine x times sine x. Okay, and now let's take a look at what we have, and let's take each of those terms and kind of divide it off into two factors. Let's take the 1 over cosine x as one factor, and sine x over cosine x as a second factor. Same thing in the second term, 1 over sine x and cosine x over sine x. Now we've seen these before. We just up above, when we were reviewing our basic trigonometric functions, secant x, that was 1 over cosine x. 1 over sine x was cosecant x, and tangent was sine over cosine x. It might also be helpful if we just, let's put in what the cotangent of x is equal to. That's cosine x over sine x. And now I think we have everything we need to simplify what we have written here. So 1 over cosine x is secant x, and what's sine x over cosine x? That's tangent of x. Subtract 1 over sine x is cosecant x, and cosine x over sine x is cotangent x. And I believe we've gotten the same answer that we got before. Yes, there is the derivative. The first time we did it, just from memory, knowing what the secant and cosecant, what the derivatives of those are, and we did it the hard way. We went through and did it just only knowing sine and cosine. See you next time.